Master distortion, comparative analysis of electricity consumption at home through a theoretical perspective. 현웅씨, Department of Electrical Computer Engineering, The Bridge School, 성공원 University. Abstract. Title of abstract. Machine learning is a modern field that has emerged as a new tool for data analytics in distributed computing environment. There are several aspects in which machine learning has improved the processing capacity along with the effectiveness of analysis. In this paper, the electrical usage of the home is analyzed through k-means clustering algorithms for obtaining the optimal home usage electrical data point. The Davis-Burdon index and the Shiller score finds the detailed optimal number of clusters in the k-means algorithms and present the application scenario of the machine learning clustering analytics. Machine learning is a state-of-the-art sub-project of artificial intelligence that is being evolved for finding large-scale intelligence analytics in the distributed computing environment. In this paper, we perform comparative analytics onto dataset collected for the electrical usage of home based on the k-means clustering algorithm using comparison to Shiller score with the relative A/1 dataset. The performance evaluation shows that the comparison index is a similar number of Shiller score even if datasets are smaller than before. Machine learning, k-means clustering, big data analytics has simplified the complexity of large-scale dataset processing in a parallel distributed environment. Chapter 1 Introduction. Machine learning is analyzing mechanisms that fetches and identifies the matching patterns from existing datasets for newer result formations. This paper discusses comparative analytics related to unsupervised learning algorithms, at which we compare the k-means clustering result with the ratio of half dataset to a Shiller score result. We performed the analysis and came to conclusion that Davis-Burdon index is now working smoothly in the scikit-learn library. So perform the check analysis and Calabi index and Shiller scores along with the Davis-Burdon index and compared result to each of them. So to run that when we reduce the dataset to mentioned proportion, the resultant dataset shows half score than traditional dataset score. Overview and motivation. In real life, household power consumption, diverse analytics, and electrical transformer. Transmission power management a period can estimate it. And each data using the electrical consumption, it can be used on progressive dictation, regional to regional demand, forecasting, maintenance of power plant and facilities. In the gas company or car company can estimate about the consumption for the via k-means algorithms and also can estimate via k-means algorithms and also can estimate about the gas consumption rate to via k-means clustering and index. Paper 1 Content Introduction. Machine learning is a sub-project of artificial intelligence that is used to develop algorithms techniques for enabling computer to run. It is used to train the computer for various aspects such as distinguishing whether emails received a spam or not, data classification application, association rule identification, and character recognitions. Machine learning includes a series of processes in which a computer looks up for similar patterns, generates a novel classification system, data analytics, and producing meaningful results. It is a kind of artificial intelligence that can be predicted based on the result. If it is supported only by analysis algorithms, machine learning is a step-by-step evolution process that leads from big data analytics to predict future actions toward making decisions on its own through paths around the result. The key issues for processing a successful prediction models remains to be within increasing the probability and reducing the error, and the said problems are resolved through enabling numerous iterative learnings. At the heart of the machine learning are representative and generalization. Whether expression is an evaluation of data, generalization is a processing of future data. Unsupervised learning is a type of machine learning that is used primarily to determine how data is organized. Unlike supervised learning or reinforcement learning, this method does not give a target value for input values. Autonomous learning is closely related to the density estimation of statistics. These autonomous learning can summarize and describe the main characteristics of the data. An example of autonomous learning is clustering. In this paper, we use k-means clustering to measure the optimal number of clusters based on the Kreisky average index and serial score Davis Burdon index, and then apply it to household electrical consumption analysis. Previous of machine learning. Machine learning is like a data mining, but it is different in predicting data based on learned attribute, mainly through training data, in addition to the three techniques: unsupervised learning, supervised learning, or reinforcement learning. Various types of machine learning techniques, such as semi-supervised learning, deep learning algorithms are developed and has been used. Clustering. Clustering is a method of data mining by defining a cluster of data considering the characteristics of given data and finding a representative point that can be represented the data groups. A cluster is a group of data with similar characteristics. If the characteristics of data are different, they must belong to different clusters. It is the main task of experimental data mining and a common techniques for statistical data analysis, using many fields including pattern recognition, information retrieval, machine learning, and computer graphics. Maximizing intercluster variance, minimizing the inner cluster variance. Note, however, that cluster should be distinguished from classification. Clustering is unsupervised learning without correct answers. In other words, we group similar objects without group information of each object. Classification, on the other hand, in supervised learning, when you carry out classification task, you will learn to predict a dependent variable with independent variable X of the data. Community feasibility assessment. Since clustering tasks are not correct, they cannot be evaluated as indicators, such as in simple accuracy, as in typical machine learning algorithms. As you can see example below, it is easy to find the optimal number of clusters without the correct answers. Cluster analysis itself not one specific algorithm, but the general task to be solved. It can be achieved by various algorithms that differ significantly in their understanding of what constitutes a cluster and how to efficiently find them. Popular notions of clusters include a group of small distance between cluster members, dense areas of the space. Scikit-learn, in general, learning are programs considering a set of n samples of data and then tries to predict the properties of unknown data. If each sample is more than a single number, and for instance, a multi-dimensional entry, it is said to have several attributes or features. Supervised learning in each data comes with an additional attribute that we want to predict. This problem can be either classification, sample belong to two more classes, and we want to learn from already labeled data on how to predict the class of unlabeled data. A couple of examples of a classification problem would be handwritten digit recognitions, in which the aim is to assign each input vector to one of the finite number of discrete categories. Another way to think of classification is the discrete, as opposed to continuous form of supervised learning where one has a limited number of categories and for each of n samples provided, one if to try to label them with the correct categories of classes. Scikit-learn is a machine learning platform in the middle range of a superficial broad Python module. This package high-level language can easily have high-level documentation and proper API suggested. Using BSD license as academic or commercially used, source code documentation is downloaded from the website. Supervised learning and unsupervised learning is many problems inserted in Scikit-learn generalized models, linear quadratic recruitment analysis, kernel rigid regression, support vector machine, stochastic gradient descent model solution, also inserted in the Scikit-learn. Proposed approach. K-means algorithm is one of the clustering methods for divided. Divided is giving the data among the many partitions. For example, receive data object N, divided data input data divided K, data each group consisting of cluster. Below equation is a K-means algorithm when cluster consisting of algorithms using cost function use it. In other words, one of the data object divided by the K group. Currently divided similarity, dissimilarly with reducing the cost function about it, and this theory, each object similarly increase, different group similarities will decrease. K-means algorithm is each centroid and each group data object times summations. From this function result the data object group updated cluster progressed. How to be clustering in a way is Karin-Skarabaj index, Davis word index, Dunn index, Shiller score. In this paper, evaluate via Karin-Skarabaj index and Shiller scores evaluated. From the cluster Karin-Skarabaj index S, the cluster's distributed average and the cluster distributed ratio will give it to you. For this, BK is a distributed matrix from each group, WK is a cluster distributed defined. N is the number of data, CQ, data group, CQ is a cluster, Q is centroid, C is the E of the centroid, and Q is the number of data, number in cluster Q. Shiller score is the easy way to in data, I each data cluster data's definition, and I each data is not clustered inner data definition. Shiller score equal to calculate that. From this calculate SI equal to the function. SI is close to I's data. I is a correct cluster to each thing. Close to -1 cannot distribute cluster is distributed. From this paper, machine using the machine learning library, scikit-learn is in the household power consumption clustering. Household power consumption from the dataset download from University of California Irvine Machine Learning Data Repository and then use it. This data set is via delimiter is divided. Global active power, global reactive power, voltage, global intensity is divided. Global active power and global reactive power XY axis experimented. Python library is Anaconda K-means algorithms. Key point is using data keep K clusters. Reduce cluster distance. K-means algorithms input data put the labels. Figure 1 is a before check Karin-Skarabaj index and Shiller score execute K-means algorithms result. Figure 1 to figure 11 are A4-1 dataset K-means clustering result for household power consumption from UC Irvine repository and reduce the dataset A4-1 times from original UCI machine learning data repository. After all, reduce each cluster distance, calculate each cluster Karin-Skarabaj index. Increasing clusters Karin-Skarabaj index will decrease with a K ratio to low. Estimate K this cluster partition with one more or known. The electric consumption rate is very important. This one is the most important fact. Equal with the Karin-Skarabaj index estimation, calculate Shiller score. The cluster will increase, Shiller score will decrease with a K distributed a low factor with optimal K represented. From K-means algorithm calculate proper cluster. Thing is very important. From the data estimate Shiller score, the result is K equals 7, each cluster centroid and data prices. Shiller score are 0.799 is the optimal score. From the former Karin-Skarabaj index, result are 563.99 is the optimal result. Using the K-means algorithm, the factor is figure 11. From this K-means algorithm, cluster 7, each group's centroid and each centroid distance will be optimal value. From this result, each centroid can divide it. Household power consumption rate via clustering. Davis-Borde index. If the ground truth labels are not known, Davis-Borde index scikit-learn matrix Davis-Borde. Then the Davis-Borde index is defined as the 0 is the lowest score as possible. Score value closer to 0 indicate better partition. But the problem is the algorithm does not attach it in the scikit-learn library and only explain it in the document page, but cannot experiment easily. Related work. Machine learning is a subproject of artificial intelligence that is used to develop algorithms techniques for enabling the computer to run. It is used to train the computer for various aspects such as distinguishing whether emails received are spam or not, data classification application, association rule identification, and character recognitions. Machine learning includes a series of processes in which computer look up for similar patterns, generate a novel classification system, data analysis, and producing meaningful result. It is a kind of artificial intelligence that can be predicting based on the result if it is supported only by analytics algorithms. Machine learning is a step-by-step evolution process that leads from the big data analytics to predict future actions toward making decisions on its own through past-learned result. The key issues for processing a successful prediction model remains to be within increasing the probability and reducing the error, and the said problems are resolved through enabling numerous iterative learnings. At the heart of machine learning are representation and generalization, where expression is an evaluation of data and generalization is the processing of future data. Unsupervised learning is a type of machine learning that is used primarily to determine how data is organized. Unlike supervised learning, reinforcement learning, this method does not give a target value for input values. Autonomous learning is closely related to the density estimation of statistics. This autonomous learning can summarize and describe the main characteristics of the data. An example of autonomous learning is clustering. In this paper, we use K-means algorithms to measure the optimal number of clusters based on the Klein-Skarabaj index and zero-score dispersion index, and then apply household electricity consumption analysis. Summary. From the paper, household power consumption via K-means clustering uses a library which scikit-learn Anaconda 3 open source personally can easily follow it, and because using BSD license to real world don't have difficulties to do that. Not only K-means algorithms, PC algorithms, but also SVM algorithms, etc., etc. Other machine learning algorithms clustering can also do it. From this result in real life, household power consumptions, diverse analytics, and electrical transformer, transmission power can manage the period it can estimate it, and each data using electricity consumption, it can be used to progressive taxation, regional to regional demand forecasting, maintenance of power plant and facilities can do it. In the gas company can estimate via K-means algorithms and also can estimate the gas consumption rate to via K-means clustering and index. Content. Machine learning is an analyzing mechanism that fetches and identifies the matching patterns from existing datasets for newer result formations. The paper discussed comparative analysis related to unsupervised learning algorithms, at which we compared the K-means clustering result with a ratio of half dataset zero-score result. We performed analysis and came to the conclusion that Davis-Bordin index is now working smoothly in the scikit-learning. So performing a check analysis for Klein-Skarabaj index and zero-score along with the Davis-Bordin index and compare the result to each of them, so to run that when we reduce the dataset to a method proportion, the resultant dataset shows half score than the traditional dataset score. Related work. Machine learning is a field of artificial intelligence that is used to develop algorithms and techniques that enable computer to run. It is used to train the computer to distinguish whether emails received are spam or not. And there are various applications such as data classification, associated rule identification, character recognition, which comply to the standard machine learning perspectives. It includes a series of processes in which computer finds its own patterns, creates new classification system, analyzes data, and produces meaningful results. The successful prediction occurs with the increase in probability and decrease in error issues. Machine learning enables it to sort out of issues which various iterative learning. Among them, supervised learning is highly related to summarizing the learning method for enforcement mechanisms. Clustering is a process of mining the dataset by defining a character of data that considers that the characteristics of input and finds representative methods to point out the data groups. In this way, cluster is a group of relevant data elements with similar characteristics. If the functions are not the same, the ingredients belong to contrast clusters. Clustering unsupervised learning without accuracy in answers. In the same way, the objects having the same information are grouped together for similar elements. However, the classification is a way related to supervised learning. When you perform classification operations, the system will learn to predict the dependent variable with the independent variable of the data. Scikit-learn is a machine learning platform in the middle range of superficial broad Python module. This package high-level language cannot easily high-level documented and proper API suggested. Using BSL license, academic commercially use it. Source code documentation is downloaded from the website. Supervised learning and unsupervised learning is the main problems inserted in a scikit-learn. Generalized models, linear and quadratic decrement analysis, corner rigid regression, support vector machine, stochastic gradient descent model solution also inserted in the scikit-learn. Paper 2, Methodology. K-means algorithm is one of the clustering methods for divided. Divided is giving the data among the many partitions. For example, receive data object and divided data is input data divided K. Data each group consisting of character below equation is the K-means algorithm. When cluster consists of algorithm using the cost function used. In other words, one of the data object divided by the K group correctly, the divided similarly dissimilarly with reducing the cost function about it, and from the theory each object similarly increase. Different group similarity will decrease K-means algorithms in each centroid, and each group data object times summations from this function result the data object group updated clustering progress. Shiller score is the same each weight data each data cluster in data's definition on each data is clustered inner and data definition. Shiller score SI is equal calculated. From this calculate SI is equal to the function. SI is close to 1 is the data I is a correct cluster to each thing. Close to -1 cannot distribute cluster distributed. From this paper, machine using the machine learning library, scikit-learn is a household power consumption clustering. Household power consumption from the dataset downloaded from the University of California Irvine machine learning dataset repository and then use it. This dataset is via derivative is divided. Global active power, global reactive power voltage, global intensity is divided. Global active power and global reactive power, the XY axis experimented. Python library Anaconda 3 K-means algorithms key point is using data key clusters, reducing cluster distance. K-means algorithms input data put the labels. Figure 1 is a before check Kalinske-Arabov index and the Shiller score execute. K-means algorithms result. Figure 1 to Figure 11, APOR1 dataset K-means clustering result for household power consumption from UC Irvine repository and the reduced dataset APOR1 times from original UCI machine learning data repository. From K-means algorithms calculate the proper cluster, thing is very important. From the data estimate Shiller score, the result is k equals 7, each cluster, centroid, and data prices, Schiller score is 0.799 is optimal score. Even if dataset is so small, but the A1 dataset k equals 7, each cluster, centroid, and data prices, Schiller score 0.810 is the optimal score. From this K-image algorithm's cluster 7s, all dataset A1 dataset, each group centroid, and each centroid's distance will be optimal value. From this result, the dataset is decreases, but the K-image clustering class vector space. Each optimal cluster is the same situation with the before. Original dataset household power consumption rate via clustering. From this paper, household power consumption via K-image clustering, use a library which Scikit-learn and Anaconda 3 open source personally can easily follow it, and because using BSD license in real works, don't have difficulties to do that. From the result, even if it reduces the dataset A1 dataset, but the Schiller score and all the clustering result is same as before. But the population will increase, it can show a clear result for the classification and the vector space. Large dataset to small dataset is clear to show to the specific result for the Schiller score, but the opposite side is not clearly allowed. Because of 4-dimension vector dataset from the experiment reduces the experiment time if we receive the huge dataset from the analysis. Conclusion. His discussion approached to a diverse aspect of the K-image clustering applications. First time tried to reduce the K-image algorithm's time consumption, but next time I tried to change my aspect to the how to reduce the time from the large dataset. The approach is changed. These days, via machine learning algorithms can estimate about when changing the part lifetime from the result. All of the experiments use the library Scikit-learn and Anaconda 3 open source can easily implement any experiment environment. Because using BSD license can analyze diverse indexes from the first experiment from the second experiment, it can dataset is huge need time to analyze. How many centroid is a proper K-image cluster at the time can use time. Compare with the A1 dataset but limited classification and vector space from the experiment reduce the estimated time if received the huge dataset from its analysis.